Conservation Commission. I'm Austin Rutherford, the staff liaison. Just a couple notes here before we begin. Again, please mute all mics unless you are speaking. Please state your name before all the statements. That way we know to do the minutes properly. Those interested in making a public statement, please follow the directions provided on the screen if you're joining us via YouTube. Also note that there's about a 30-second delay between what we are doing here on this end and the YouTube. And so we will try to wait for you to call in an appropriate amount of time. The procedure tonight, Chair Designee opens the hearing like I'm doing now. There will be the staff presentation for each item, then followed by the applicant presentation, then public comments, board questions, staff rebuttal, applicant rebuttal, those if needed, then board comments and deliberation, and then the board deposition of the request, aka the motion and vote. Before we start our agenda tonight, I do need the election of a temporary chair to serve for tonight. Are there any nominations?
Nominate Gene Gallagly.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those, actually, if we could have a roll call, Jane, for those having Gene Gallagly as our temporary chair for tonight.
Mr. Hackenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Crossland?
Yes.
And I guess Mr. Gallagly.
Can I abstain?
Sorry.
That's okay. So, Gene, if you could get us rolling with item number 1, approval of the agenda.
Approval of the agenda. No, I have not done this before, Austin, so I may be.
Just ask for a motion for approval of the agenda.
Oh, okay, that's easy enough. I'd like to have a motion for an approval of the agenda, tonight's agenda. Do I hear a motion?
I move.
Do I hear a second?
Yeah, second.
So, Jane, that was John and Corey that did the first and second there. Can we have a roll call, Jane?
Yes, let's have a roll. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Do you want me to do it or do you want to do it?
No, I'd prefer you do it.
Okay. Mr. Hackenberg?
Yes. What are we asking now?
Approval of the agenda. It's just the vote.
Approval of the agenda for tonight.
No, I approve the agenda.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Crosland?
Yes.
And I approve. It's unanimous.
Austin, we do the minutes? You did the minutes first?
Minutes are coming right next.
Okay.
Right here. Mr. Gallagly, if you could ask for approval of the minutes from July 13th. This was our regular scheduled meeting. I would add the special meeting which happened before that. The minutes for that haven't been completed as of yet.
All right, I would like to request approval for the reading of the minutes for, I guess this was the August 6th meeting?
No, this was July 13th.
I meant, July 13th. The July 13th meeting, please.
Move to approve.
Second. Second.
Could we have a roll call?
Okay, Mr. Hackenberg?
I approve.
Mr. Barber?
Approve.
Mr. Crosland?
Yes.
And I approve. It's unanimous. Okay.
Correspondence, you received a good amount of correspondence dealing with the STR discussion that we'll do later. And then you also received a couple other pieces of correspondence, dealing with our last meeting, and then another also referring to 231 Bennett Street, which we'll hear later on. Going to the general public comment, Jane, if you could let in those 2 callers that we have one at a time, or if any more have appeared.
Do I just click on the number? Never.
It should show a check mark beside
Okay.
one of them or something like that, and that's the way you let them in. Just one at a time, though.
Okay. Mhm.
And
Just
you,
let-
I think this is Linda. Can you hear me on the line? Because I
Oh.
don't see.
Linda.
Can you hear me?
Do I just click on the number?
Oh, Linda, could you put your computer on
Is
silent
now joining.
for right now?
Or something like that, and that's the way you let them in. Just one at a time, though.
Okay. And just
We're getting the feedback from the YouTube.
Hear me on the line because I don't see.
Linda.
Can you hear me?
Oh, Linda.
Go ahead, caller.
Put your computer on silent
Now joining.
for right now. That's the way you let them in. Just one at a time. We're getting the feedback from the YouTube.
So whoever has the YouTube recording going on in the background, if you could put your mic on mute or turn the volume down on your computer, please. Getting your feedback.
So whoever has the YouTube recording going on in the background, if you put your mute.
Not here, quiet.
Just a second. Jane, could you see when the volume is going on, there's usually it appears in bold. Could you put whoever that is on mute, please? Thank you. You allowed in a caller, correct, Jane? Jane?
I'm sorry, I'm here. I allowed in one caller so far. And that was-
Caller. Okay. Caller, could you do your 3 minutes, please?
You want me to unmute them?
Yeah. Actually, they have to hit *6 to unmute themselves.
Yeah, I can't do it.
So if you're calling in, you need to hit *6 to unmute yourself, and then you can speak.
Do you want me to let the other caller in?
Well, let's get, if they're watching the YouTube, then they will hear it after in a few seconds.
Okay.
Hit the *6.
Do we have to let them know what number we're letting in so they know it's them?
We don't see the phone number.
I see part of a number. It starts with 26, bunch of stars, 87.
Yeah, they all appear that way, just so that their phone number is hidden. Okay, so I'm not sure if they're waiting to speak right now. Jane, I guess allow, and then the next one. Again, for you, those of you calling in, hit *6 to unmute yourself after you're allowed.
Hello?
Yes,
Ashley
please state your name.
Woody. Oh,
Is now
hi.
joining.
My name is Ashley Woody, and I live at 110 Friend Street in the Old Village. And I apologize that I didn't get any correspondence to you because this has just come up quite recently. I do have some materials that I'll send on. What I wanted to talk about was the tree protection ordinance and what's gone on at 104 Friend Street in the Old Village. In 2008, one of my oak trees was damaged by a builder of the house at 409 Royal Avenue. And so I swore that never again would this happen. So I went to every meeting possible, talked to every person possible, particularly Mr. Bernard. And there was the plan where it was specified where they were to run the SCENG, which is now Dominion Energy cable, buried electric cable. And so I thought, okay, I saw that my tree protection zone was on the plan and everything. Mr. Bernard had said that they didn't have to put up the barrier around that one because there was an old slab driveway and that would protect the roots. Well, imagine my surprise when I got up on Tuesday morning, the 4th of August, the morning after our tropical storm, and went outside to check the rain gauge and get my newspaper. and saw a little digger machine over there, and I poked my head through the bushes to see what was going on. And they'd already dug a 4-foot trench all the way down the property line, just completely tearing the roots out of my live oak tree, not following the plan that was approved by the town. Couldn't get anybody on the telephone. You know, I called the builder. You know, he was very rude to me. Finally, Mr. Bernard called me back. And so after I spoke with him, where he said that they were not supposed to put it there, I went over and looked in the white dock box, you know, where they're supposed to put their permits. And I was actually looking for the permit from the company, the subcontractor that dug the trench, which there was no permit in there. But there was a copy of the site plan where it showed very clearly where the line was to run around the tree protection zone. And I just want to let you guys know that I realize that you're all about, you know, saving the historic things in the old village. It includes my tree, but this has been done to me not just once, but twice by conceivably reputable builders. And I just want to know what's going to happen. You know, I'm starting here with you guys because you're having the first meeting after this occurred. I plan to be at the town council meeting to bring this up during the general comments section there. But this is just unconscionable. Thank you for your time. I'll listen to what you have to say.
Thank you. Jane, do we have any other callers? Or is that other one still on the line?
I don't see any other callers. The other one has been muted.
Okay. All right. Sorry, that was my alarm. Okay. I guess we'll just for future reference, the commission doesn't have purview over trees or vegetation, but I will get with the appropriate town staff about the trees at 104 Front Street.
It was from you all that this came.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
the approved. But anyway, thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Jane, if you could take the callers
Ashley
offline.
Woody.
Is now exiting.
I'm sorry, Austin.
If you could take off the callers, if you could.
You mean remove this caller that's out here?
Yeah, I guess since they're not calling in right now, I guess.
Okay.
Put them back in the queue. Okay.
Is now exiting.
Next are consent motions. I did email you, the commission, a few days ago and let you know that there are two viable consent items if you are wanting to consent item, or we can hear them. Depends on what you'd like to do. Otherwise, we can have a motion and then a vote for consent items.
I think we can go ahead and have consent items on the first two that you asked.
Okay.
Anybody else think that works?
Yep.
If you want to make a motion to that effect, Mr. Crossland,
Okay, I'll make a motion to that effect then.
could you just state the addresses, the first two addresses, please?
Yes, 754 Pitt Street and 320 McCants Drive.
Can we get a second for that, please?
Second.
All right. And then, is there any public comment out there for these two items? We'll wait about 30 seconds for anyone to call in. If you're wanting to call in about items 6A and B, which are 754 Pitt Street or 320 McCants Drive, now is your opportunity, as these are about to be consent motioned.
Austin, didn't you have some other consent motions?
Those were the only two.
Okay. Thank you.
Jane, has anyone come in?
Nope, we have no other callers.
Okay.
So we're talking just about A and B, is that correct?
Yes, for consent
Item A
item.
and
Yes.
item B? What
Yes.
about, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Just A and B. So
Just
Jane, could we have a roll call?
Yes. Mr. Hackenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Crossland,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagly,
Approved.
and Mr. Barber.
Yes.
It passes
All right.
unanimously.
Just a second as we go through here. So if you were here for items A and B, you are free to leave unless you would like to wait and speak on another item, or just want to watch the rest of the proceedings for your benefit. Your choice.
Austin, John here. Will we consider anything today for C, D, and E?
We just have, yeah, I'm moving to item C right now.
Okay, good. Okay.
For the staff presentation, Austin?
Yes.
Okay.
So for 915 Royal Avenue, applicant is seeking final review for demolition of a home. Applicable ordinances are the demolition ordinance, and applicable guidelines are demolition number 1 and 3. This home was built in 1972. It is located within an AE 13 flood zone, which requires the lowest common floor member to be 14 feet above sea level. The land that is underneath it is about 5 to 6 feet based on town data. Per the provisions of section 156.432 I2, the commission needs to consider whether the home is worthy of historic designation based on the provisions of section 156.432B, provisions which are provisions for homes younger than 50 years old that would allow the designation. Item A is a building or structure removed from its original location, but which has significant primary for architectural value, or is the surviving structure most importantly associated with a historic person or event, or B, a reconstructed building when accurately executed in a suitable environment and presented in a dignified manner as a part of a restoration master plan, and when no other building or structure with the same association has survived, or C, a property primarily commemorative in intent if design, age, tradition, or symbolic value has invested it with its own historical significance, or D, a property achieving significance within 50 years before the current year if of its own exceptional importance. If no determination for historic determination is made, then the commission may review the request based on one or more of the following criteria with the burden of proof falling upon the applicant. A, where the public safety or welfare requires removal of the building, or B, the structure cannot be economically rehabilitated on the site to provide a reasonable income or residential environment compared to other structures in the general area, or C, a finding of substantial economic hardship is established by the commission, or D, where the proposed new development is more compatible with the surrounding area considering such factors as location and exterior design. The applicant requests that demolition be approved on the basis that the home is non-conforming for flood regulations, and that would fall in line with criteria A, where the public safety and welfare requires removal of the building. If the commission motions for approval, it should be conditioned that the demolition permit cannot be given until the replacement home receives approval and is submitted for permitting. Moving to the staff recommendation, though staff always prefers to have an elevation certificate to confirm, judging on the information that staff has access to for the flood elevations in this area, the home is definitely non-conforming with flood regulations. Due to the home being younger than 50 years old and not appearing to have any other historic attributes, staff does recommend approval for demolition based upon section 156.432 I2A. Mouthful, I know. With the condition confirming that the demolition permit shall not be issued until the replacement home is approved and submitted for permitting. Here's a survey of the property there on Royal Avenue as you're getting kind of close down to the marsh. Home as it currently exists.
And I'm not getting the
I'm not seeing the visuals.
the visual.
Really? Okay. Let me jump out. And then
Austin,
go
share
back.
your screen.
Okay, that's my bad.
No problem.
Is that working?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So let me go back here. So here is the current home and that site survey. And here is the streetscape as it exists right now. And you can see the homes that have been developed later on next to it have been raised to whatever the flood standard was at the time that they were built. So that completes my staff report, and we can move on to the applicant presentation if they're available.
Yes,
John?
we are available. Hey, Austin.
Hello, John. So you have 10 minutes if you'd like to speak for that long.
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Please state your name so we'll have it for the record.
It's John Bench, and I live at 915 Royal. You're looking at my home right there, the little one, in between the two other structures. And we get flooded every single time it rains significantly, and we flood significantly every time we have these moon phase tides. And then if we get a perfect storm condition like a hurricane that comes by, we get flooded. So we get flooded in the backyard even when we have these moon tides, and I haven't had a rain. So as you can see, I'm ready to move on with this house and get it demoed, and then at a later date come up with a site plans to build a new home. And if I can't build a new home, then perhaps the new buyer of the residence will be able to come up with a reasonable home to y'all's liking and approval. But I'm trying to get this first step here in getting your guys to approve the removal of the home. We have the house up for sale actively right now. And based on the price, it's for lot value, and I'm not really selling the home, but for the lot. That's about it. I just don't see anybody wanting to buy this house. The additional neighbors who have knocked down homes recently around me have added fill dirt exponentially. And now I'm in the pit, so to speak. And I'm literally in a pit. So I couldn't, I can't compete. I can't compete with my neighbors, and something has to be done to stop the flooding. And the only thing I can do is really rebuild and bring in some grade and take corrective actions to improve the site drainage. And I think whoever buys it is going to want to do the same thing. So this is the initial start of doing that. And I need you guys to approve it for me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. If you could put your mic on mute just for right now, while we get through all the public comment and all the other procedures. Thank you.
Any questions of the applicant from the commission?
Yeah, I've got one. How long have you lived there, John?
I've lived there 30 years, sir.
30 years, wow. So you've seen it every year come a flood?
Yeah, it's gotten worse every year.
Okay.
If you guys are ready, we could have the public comment. If you could just open that up, Mr. Gallagly.
Okay, if there are no more questions. Is there anyone out in the public who would like to speak on this item? And if so, please remember to state your name.
Jane, just let us know if we get anyone.
Currently, there's no one waiting.
Okay. Just wait a couple of seconds.
Okay, any final comments from the staff?
The applicant needs our help. That's all, and I understand that. I'm for it.
But Austin, you said this is conditional on the new plan, so I'm not sure we can do exactly what he's asking. Is that correct?
The zoning code provides that it provides that the home can be approved for demolition, but the home cannot actually be demoed until the replacement home is submitted and approved, and also submitted for building permitting. So he can get approval for the demolition and sell it if that's the route he's wanting to go, and sell it as is, but he would not be able to demo it at this current time.
Gotcha.
And that's straight from the zoning code, so there's no way around that.
Does the street itself down there flood, or is his lot a low point?
I can't specify necessarily myself. I know William Street, which is pretty, right near it, does flood periodically with tidal flow, with even normal king tides and stuff like that.
And then my one last question is, what is the closest historic home even to this home? Like, are there any nearby?
It'd be on the back side, I think, on Pitt Street.
Okay.
So there's a couple on Pitt Street that are on that side as you're getting down there. And I think that would be not necessarily right behind them, but maybe a couple houses either way.
Yeah, I think actually that jogged my memory. I think there's a couple houses for sale right behind this one on Pitt that are also, those must be the historic ones because I think they're pretty old.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like on Royal in this stretch that you couldn't see a historic house from this house.
At least not right now.
Yeah.
I don't believe there's really any historic homes on this section of Royal. There might be one south of McCants, but not directly adjacent to this home.
Gotcha.
Jane, we had someone call, pop in. Is that a phone call?
Yes, it is.
I guess we could allow them in.
Okay.
Since we're still in public comment.
Okay.
Caller, if you're calling in, make sure to hit *6, please. And you can give your name and address in 3 minutes.
Yes. You ready?
Yes.
It's Gary Montgomery. My address is 320 McCants Drive.
Gary, were you calling in about your own item, or are you calling in about this item, demolition?
My own item, I guess.
Okay. Gary, your item was approved previously.
Okay.
So it's already been approved. Yep.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yep. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Okay, on this item, I'd like to make a motion.
We need to close the public comment first. If you could do that, Mr. Gallagly.
Yes. Are there any other further comments from the staff?
No.
Or any other comments from the applicant? Well, then we need to close the public portion of this meeting and go to the board deliberation. If there's no other comments from the board, do I hear a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we grant the demo subject to the submission and approval of new plans, which is pretty much what we're required to do by guidelines. But it doesn't matter if you submit plans or the buyer submits plans. It just means that it can be demoed when new plans are submitted. So,
Mr. Crossland, could you include that language, at least the section language right here in your motion there?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Put it in.
Okay.
That's the guideline we're talking about.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I'll second too, or third it or fourth it. That's good.
Okay. Jane, could we have a roll call?
Are you saying Jane or Jean?
Jane.
Okay.
Mr.
Yeah.
Hockenberg,
Yes.
Mr.
Here.
Carlson,
Yes.
Gallagly,
Yes.
and Mr. Barber.
Yes.
Okay, passes.
Moving on to 231 Bennett Street, applicant is seeking final review for home rehabilitation, additions, accessory shed, and site improvements. You saw this item, I believe it was back in, let's see, the special meeting early in July as a preliminary comment. So applicable ordinances are impervious lot coverage, accessory building limitations, BAR requirement, historic buildings, and parking requirements. Applicable guidelines are foundations number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7, masonry exterior number 1, 3, and 4, wood exterior number 1, 4, and 6, doors and windows number 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, roofs number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 8, porches and stoops number 1 and 3 and 4, garages and accessory buildings number 3, 5, additions number 2, 3, 4, sidewalks, driveways, and streets number 3, 4, and 8, and site features number 3. Again, the project received preliminary comment at the June's commission. That was actually the early July meeting. The applicant indicates that it conforms with the requirements of the zoning code. The commission reviewed the dormers on either side of the home and determined they were appropriate. There are a few differences between the preliminary comment to the final review that staff is uncomfortable with. Those are the change of the front door. The front door is being expanded for side lights, and the new design for the rear window, which appears to be an inappropriate window design. And this is coming from that they just don't seem to follow the intent of the design guidelines for doors and windows. Going straight to just those two items, since you've seen the rest of this. This was from the preliminary review, where you see that the door was basically being, going, one for one, as opposed to the final review where the side lights are being now added and the door is being expanded, which is which is in conflict with the design guidelines. And then moving to that back window, which I mentioned. So an appropriate window design here, and then moving to a rather where the lights in the window are much bigger than the lights that you see in the windows elsewhere in the home. And therefore, staff recommends approval, but with the front door and the rear window being conditioned to follow the preliminary design, and then also conditioned to allow staff to approve the paint color. Just something. That being a new item. So here's the 1893 Sanborn map. As you can see, the home as it existed then. Then moving on to the site survey as it exists now. These would be their demolition plans. So removing some stairs, and that's about it, and moving the AC unit. And here are the additions. Again, you've pretty much seen these. Not much has changed with this as well. For streetscape, going on to their floor plans, then to their roof plans, and the foundation plan. Then going to what the new floor plan will be. The roof plan. So one of the comments last time was to make sure that the dormers did not meet up with the peak of the roof, and they are not meeting up. So here would be the front design from Bennett. The side design, again, you can see the front door there from the side, from the alley. Then the rear, with the window. And then the side facing the neighbor. And then to the accessory structure. and then to the wall section, or wall sections for these next couple pages. And then they have also given us this 3D rendering. And that concludes the staff comments. If the applicant is available, you'll have 10 minutes, Ross.
Yes. Good evening, and thank you, staff and board, for your time and consideration. And thank you for the gracious review at our preliminary meeting. And just want to touch on kind of the refinements of the submittal, which are pretty limited, but we feel craft a more thoughtful design of the restoration. And just one thing to reiterate is that we are proposing to repair and refurbish as many of the original windows as we can, because which is a much more kind of intensive and costly undertaking than merely kind of a wholesale replacement of them that you see done. And we feel that the original windows really give a lot to the historic quality and character of the home. And we are, if you can stop on this page, we are keeping some of the, reusing some of the existing windows that we had originally were going to replace due to them not being the true original windows. They're replaced at a certain later time, but they're still somewhat old and still wood windows, and they still kind of tell part of the story of this house, which has kind of been added on through time. If you could go to the alley elevation. And one of the things that we did on this one as well, we are keeping the windows on the left side where we now have kind of shutters on the windows on the left and the 9/9s. But previously we had kind of doubled up because that's the living room, and there's a view corridor down that direction, down the alley to the harbor, which kind of is a really nice point. And right now with those windows, it's tight, but we felt as an importance, we want to keep at least the alley side, which is somewhat more visible, as kind of keeping that historic spacing. And then as we come around the corner to the rear facade, which is pretty much hidden from view. There's really, if you go there, you really have to come kind of all the way around to get into this little nook of the rear. And really right now, those two windows are kind of off center, and they are the 9/9 windows, which do not match the rest of the house. There's just kind of those 4 windows there, and they're ganged up together, which is not quite, as the older house or the older windows aren't quite as ganged. And they're just, the 9/9 windows are in kind of the worst shape of all the windows, and would probably have to have a little bit more of the replacement type of windows. And what we are proposing is kind of adding this window back here, which there are many examples in the old village, particularly on, if you stand there and actually look towards the harbor on the historic house at, 235 Bennett, there are 3 large 12 light fixed windows. And we feel that, the light, it's more about the ratio of the lights that have that kind of verticality to them that kind of create that relationship with the original windows. And it really speaks to the house and its location as, you're standing in there and you get that view down to the harbor. And it kind of, the precedent in the old village of, all those historic houses are turned, at an angle looking down towards the harbor and kind of drawing you to the water. And this new window would be, wood, historic materials and detailing. And it's just kind of a unique thing, at least, to this house that would add to the kind of the next story and, you know, the character of the home, and will be the Mid-Hours homestead for many years to come. And, you know, just the kind of clumsiness of the two windows that are already there, you know, just being a little off center and being deteriorated. So that's kind of speaking to that. And then as we can go back to the alley elevation. So with this, the existing front door is non-historic, and the opening has been kind of cobbled together to create a size for a smaller door, a replacement door at some point in time, which is what it is there now. And this layout, or, you know, this design kind of takes cues from the existing amazing French doors that are there. And, you know, it gives order to the facade, and kind of this, you know, this obvious entrance, this kind of proper entrance that you kind of come up on the porch and there's, you know, a wall full of doors. It kind of gives you that door that, you know, is the front door. And this design is on vast majority of houses that have, you know, the story and a half with the gables above, with the, you know, the front door with side lights. So it's a very traditional thing in the Old Village. And kind of more on the actual door itself, I'm not sure how well you know the Mid-Hours, but Elizabeth is, she has an enjoyment and creativity with the use of kind of salvaged and old antique period appropriate items that she is bringing to this project to kind of create more of that sense of this is an old home that will remain kind of the feeling of an old home. And she's found this kind of beautiful antique solid cypress door with side lights that, you know, we've been kind of chatting about and seeing, you know, we feel that would probably be the most, you know, the most proper thing, appropriate thing that we can put there that is more based in the time period of, you know, the home, rather than, you know, getting a new built wood door that is just a more of a, you know, it's a modern door, but it looks old, you know, but you still don't have that character of the old house, and the door. And kind of to wrap things up, I feel that the effort that this project will need for the restoration, and as the house has been vacant for so long now, needs a lot of work, and we are very sympathetic in its historic nature. And we're not really expanding the footprint, proper sizing of detailing, and, you know, everything kind of small scaled. And, you know, with the floor plan is really set to keep a lot of the existing structural walls, instead of blowing the whole thing out and creating this modern floor plan in there. It still kind of remains that uniqueness of an old home. And we've been in touch with the town code official to ensure that, you know, we can do the thing, you know, we can restore these old windows as much as we can. And we've been talking with the State Preservation Board on the different techniques and different things. And, you know, we just, you know, want to make sure we comply, but retain, enhance and preserve the historic home for, you know, another 100 years. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of the applicant from the commission? Mr. Crosland?
Yeah. So, how old is the cypress door that the owner has sourced?
I am not sure, but they are on the call, so if she might know.
Hi, this is Elizabeth.
Hi
Can
there.
you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, the door is from the probably like 1870, 1890 era, which I thought was a perfect fit given the age of the house. I studied historic preservation and interior design at Savannah College of Art and Design back in the day. So I have an MFA in interior design with a minor in preservation. And I just feel like this little house is a gem because it's been relatively untouched, and I'm just hoping and really excited to make it seem, while we need to bring it up to modern living standards as far as code and solidity of construction, I think it would be really nice if I could or if Ross and I could work together to bring in some enhancements, such as a special door. Everybody realizes that the door to their home is the most important thing, and it tells a lot about the home and its history and about the people that live in it. And I just really hope, if we're going to the effort with all the windows and such like that, I just would be a little saddened to have to go to Southern Lumber. And I mean, I could probably get something replicated, but we're dealing with a door that's been around a lot longer than all of us, and probably will be for a lot longer. So anyway.
It is period appropriate.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Long answer, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. No.
Do you know where it was from?
No, I do believe it was the Charleston area. The men there's an architectural salvage place out on Highway 61 that I've dealt with quite frequently on other projects. And they were very excited to have the entire package with the door, the side lights, and the transom right there, so Charleston area.
The one I was wondering about the transom, because you couldn't really see it in the elevation. And it looked like the other doors from the porch had a transom.
They do.
So how does this relate in terms of, height to the adjacent doors?
Well, I'll tell you, I measured the door. The door itself is, I believe, 81 inches tall. I just found it about a week ago and kind of rushed to Ross and said, do you think we could at least present this as a possibility? And honestly, I'd have to refer to Ross if he could tell me, if the height is similar to those two French doors. But, to me, it's, the door is going to be a little bit wider because of the side lights, and the transom fits perfectly across the top of that. But, looks like a good fit to me.
Yeah, and typically, you'll see a lot that the main door with the transom, with the side lights and transom, end up being a little bit higher, a little bit, they have a little bit more of that hierarchy between the main door and the either windows or other doors and side lights that are more diminutive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious whether it's taller or shorter, and because that could affect how it looks.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's definitely not shorter. It is definitely not shorter. It's a very, I wouldn't say impressive. It's just a solid, very stoic looking front door.
And then in terms of the back window, I was curious if you've looked at other options besides what is presented currently.
We have, Ross, you want to talk?
Sure. Yeah, we've talked about, whether we do kind of just end up being just replicating the 9/9s that are there in that space, but the 9/9s themselves with the putty glaze are very dense windows. There's just a lot going on, and they're skinny, and it's just not really appropriate in that space where you have the view going down. It's kind of like, this is where you'd need, there's the 6x6s or something bigger, where that come down a little bit lower to the floor, something that, so we thought kind of a compromise instead of adding more windows, because the view is really through the corner. And we talked about whether we butt up windows in the corner and do that, but that's not quite as, I think we thought keeping the alley elevation and, enhancing that elevation rather than adding windows there, and just adding windows on the kind of on that back little corner, which really you end up seeing, the shed and, it's really tough to even see that spot.
Yeah, I mean, I understand you're not going to be able to see it from the street, but there is, the waterfront house behind you, that is going to see it every time they drive in and out of their, access point. And when I originally saw it, I thought it was like a scale typo. Like I thought it was just an error when I saw that window. But
well, one thing that we did, and I hope that everybody received all the letters of congratulations and recommendations and agreements with what we've presented so far from all of our neighbors. We've lived basically on that lot for 20 years, and they're all very good friends. We look at their house as well, and they've got a sunroom where they did something very similar that we'll be looking at. But honestly, their house is turned more at an angle towards the water, where ours is more perpendicular to the street and the water. Theirs is at an angle, probably to catch the breezes that we hope to get a little bit of and the views. But I don't think, again, with my background in design, I thought it was a great option that kind of could blend a little bit of contemporary sensitivity to capture a view, and we can't have a time capsule. We've got to incorporate some modernity to this. So I think that's why we settled on this. It's going to be kind of a focal point of that room when you walk into the house, to look back there and see that view from a broadened window with fewer panes. Honestly, that's why we wanted to enlarge the panes.
Yeah. And just to go back to your comment that the historic house the owners would have to drive by, they do have, as she said, a large room that has 3 of these massive, 12 light windows, very similar. So.
Yeah, but we're not reviewing that.
No, we're not.
Correct. It's just a precedent on a historic house.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not opposed to the new window. It just looks very odd on the elevation.
Well, I think some other places and some other architects might have just put a plate glass window there, and we're trying to make a little more sensitive nod to the symmetry of 9/9 panes, just on a different scale. I thought it was really pretty brilliant on Ross's behalf. But
Mr. Gallagher, I think we could move on to the public comment, and there's still the rebuttal period and everything if they so wish. So,
are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this item?
Yes, there is. Linda Balzac here, just sitting in for a little longer. I think that this restoration and renovation of this house is very sensitive to the original structure, very creative, and extremely well thought out. I've worked with the Mid-Hours before, and they've always done the right thing with their houses, because Elizabeth is very knowledgeable in this. And the back window should be allowed because you have to pay homage to the historic structure, as well as renovating and speaking of some elements today. That's it.
Any other public comments?
Jane, do we have any callers in the queue?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Any final comments from the staff?
No other comments.
Any final comments from the applicant?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Well, we can close the public portion of the meeting and go to the board deliberation. Do I hear a motion?
I hear a motion that we approve as they've approved it, as they have demonstrated to us.
John, could you include a condition for staff to approve the paint color?
No, I have not.
He's just asking you to read what's on the screen, John.
Or could you just include with your motion for staff to include the paint color, and then we can get it all done. That's all you got to say, John.
Yeah, I approve with and the paint color as well.
Okay, perfect. And we just need a second, and then
Second.
All right. And then Jane, can we have a roll call?
Okay, Mr. Hackenberg? Mr. Hackenberg?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Gallagly?
Approved.
Mr. Crossland?
Yes.
And Mr. Barber?
Approved.
Okay, unanimous.
Ross, before you leave, just send me over the paint color tomorrow, and I'll include it in your application.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Moving to the staff approvals, staff approved these 5 items, mostly done through our new change of the design guidelines to speed them on through. So unless you have any questions, we can go to the next item. No? Okay.
No questions.
For item number 8, last month, of course, we had the item about for recommendation of 217 Church Street, and a couple of you asked for a let's have a discussion for this month regarding the short-term rentals. So that's why I put this item up. So basically, right in section 156.313, the Old Village Historic District, under prohibited uses, we have short-term rental of any residentially zoned parcel is prohibited. That falls in line with our definition of short-term rental. That's over the entire town, which is rentals of under 28 days or less. And the use, and we also do not allow bed and breakfasts in the Old Village Historic District as well. You should have received, I think we had 14 pieces of correspondence, mostly against any potential changes that may result of this discussion. So just open it to any of you 4 that want to, if you want to discuss it, if you don't, whatever.
Well, I mean, I guess since I brought it up, maybe I'll just lay out a couple thoughts. Going back to the Church Street property, that's a very specific instance, but I could see how we could use, allowing short-term rentals in like very certain situations to actually help promote, preserving some of these historic homes. Because if a home is small and it's historic, then it's undesirable to like the modern world. But it could potentially work very well as a short-term rental, and give the owners an opportunity, that other people have, 2 blocks over, to either keep the property or generate some income so they can actually maintain it a little better. I know a lot of the correspondents, they're worried about this horrible effect of short-term rentals that I've never really seen yet in this town. So, honestly, it's kind of seems unfair that just because you're in the historic district, you don't have like the same rights as 2 people 2 blocks over. And I'm surprised no one in the district, would want that option. I think it's not even our choice. It's the zoning board that's got to change this. But I think with like some smart crafting of like limitations and circumstances, it could actually be used to like promote, preserving certain historic properties. And that's just kind of like the genesis from when we reviewed the property on Church Street and how it actually benefit that owner specifically.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Well, I will speak. I could not disagree more. I think the vast majority of the people do not want short-term rentals going in and out. And I have seen house parties, et cetera, that were very disruptive and very, well, just damaging to the people's property immediately adjacent to those that were being used as short-term rentals.
Was it
John,
a large house or was it a small house? I'm curious what your experience with that was.
It was a house.
Like a large house or like a one-bedroom house?
It was not a large house. It was not a small house. It was just a house.
Because I think
that
that's
had about 18 college kids in it over a week's period of time, in and out, multiple. It was a disaster. So I had seen that personally.
Was this before the
Boy,
short-term?
I'm against it.
Was this before the short-term rental provisions at the town went in, or was this recent?
This was very recent.
So what they were doing was illegal.
I can't specify it from staff's level, but if John or Robert have any comments?
I'm opposed to them. Leave the system as it is. We don't need to bother with it right now.
So the person on
Mr.
Church
Crossland?
Street, like the person on Church Street is just out of luck, and they're going to have to sell their house, and someone's going to want to demolish it and build something new. Like that's what we're into here.
I don't think so.
Like those are the scenarios where I'm saying this could actually like help the homeowner to like maintain the historic building. Like I understand you guys all live in the district and you don't want it. I don't live in the district. You know, I don't have any stake in the game here. I'm just trying to look at it objectively for like these narrow circumstances where it could be a benefit to the historic district.
If I could, from a staff's perspective, the easiest thing from a staff's perspective is to do one way or the other. Either you do exactly what the rest of the town does and what actually Jane controls for us. She's our staff for STRs for the entire town, or you just straight out prohibit it like we have now. If we were to interject any new rules, like if it was just for a house of a certain size, or if it was just for accessory structures or something along those lines, it tends to get a little bit more complicated for staff to monitor and control for any additional rules that we might put in play. Not to say that we can't do it, but just to let you know that it does it can present new challenges for staff to monitor.
I mean, I agree that it shouldn't just be adopted as is, you know, in the rest of the town. But I know for a fact, like Sullivan's Island, you know, they like promote this by, if you have a historic structure, you can even like move it on the lot, you can move it down the street. But if you keep that and it's under a certain, you know, heated square footage, they let you do a short-term rental in it, because otherwise people are just going to want to throw it away. And before you know it, everything looks like, you know, the 5,000 square foot house that everyone wants to build after they demolish something. So, I mean, honestly, it's better for me if there are no short-term rentals, because I live 2 blocks over. I have an ADU that I rent out legally through the town and all. You know, it's good income. I've never had any bad tenant. I've never had any neighbor complain. I've got like a 5-star review. People love the location. So like for me, it's better if this doesn't happen. I feel like there's certain circumstances where the owner is in a bad situation because of what they have, and there's no mechanism that like helps them and helps maintain the historic value of the building. But if no one else, if the rest of you don't care, then I guess I don't care.
Well, based on the correspondence, I just want to say it appears the people who live in the old village who heard about this are at this time not compelled to make a change. And of course, when I say that, that's at this time. Maybe in a few years people will feel differently, but I think we need to be deferential to the.
But look at the number of correspondence pieces we got out of how many people live in the district. What was the ratio, Austin? I know there was at least one person that was for it in limited, circumstances.
I can't exactly specify exactly what the ratio would be.
I saw like 7 or 8 against it, and I saw 1 for it, and I guess I missed a handful because you said we had 14.
I think it was 14. Of course, this wasn't. Yeah. This was just a discussion item as well, so it wasn't a vote or anything. So obviously, if we were to go down the line and actually start changing the zoning code and it becomes a bigger item, and word passes on from homeowner to homeowner, obviously we get more correspondence that way, as we have in the past about certain items. So it just depends on. We've had items that
like, even if all 14 were negative, that's 14 out of like 500 people. That's like the squeaky wheel gets the grease. It's not a majority of people by any matter of counting.
Well, it's not just people who felt like speaking up. Most people don't feel like speaking up, but either they speak up for something or against something. So it was overwhelmingly for keeping it as is. And I think on that basis, I would make a motion to leave it unchanged at this point.
We don't need a motion. This was just for discussion. It's really just a discussion.
What if you limit it to like, if it's a standalone building, it's got to be under like 1,000 square feet or whatever threshold we want to set. And then if you want to rent like some people have these 5,000 square foot houses and they might want to like rent a room out. I don't know. In that scenario, you'd like have to be there. Like you'd have to be, owner on site. We could prohibit like any of these companies that people set up where they own like multiple short-term rentals. Like whoever does it can only be doing it for this one short-term rental that they have. And then, Austin said there's like 500 or some structures in the historic area. You could limit the number, the town's limit of 1% would only be 5 of them. That'd be a little bit, useless. But like we could talk about like a limit, whether it's 2% or a specific hard number. And maybe when you get the permit's only good for a period of time so that, people can do it for a few years and then they can't get their license renewed for that short-term rental. Or I'm just saying there's a lot of variables at play that you can adjust to prevent like the party house or to prevent like the derelict, absentee landlord who never stops by the thing. I personally with mine, I live there in the main house and I have the detached ADU. And to me, it's great because the person who rents it isn't, a low income, doesn't make it's not cheap to stay in Charleston. So you're not getting like the quality of tenant is very high, if you control the parameters. And the people are hardly around. Like if I rented my ADU long-term, like someone would be there all the time. I rented short-term, people come for like 3 or 4 days for the weekend. And then during the week, it's like empty. And it's like less burdensome on my neighbors with parking, even though I have parking on my property. But just in terms of like coming and going, if my ADU was a long-term rental, it'd actually be more of a detriment to my street, I feel. So like if it's done properly, it's not a nuisance. And if anything, it's actually like less of an imposition. So like, I don't know, I think if there's careful consideration of how you allow it, you can avoid the problems. You're never going to avoid the people that do it illegally, Gene. People that do it illegally, there's nothing we can do. People that don't follow the rules aren't going to follow what we say.
Well, let me just, we are enforcing the town's STRs more fully now that we have a software program. Of course, Jane could go into way more detail than I could, but I don't think she wants to. But we are enforcing the STRs now townwide way more effectively thanks to a program that we have, and we can know exactly how many rooms they're renting out, how many times they've rented out in the past month, all these different certain whatever they got going on. I would just, again, specify that if we ended up doing our own little thing here in the Old Village, it would, be more burdensome for staff. So I'm just making sure that anything like that is known. And that goes for not just right now, but as Mr. Crosland said, going in the future, if we were to end up changing anything, not now, but maybe even 5 years from now. So just, just putting that out there.
Well, I guess I'm curious, like how are I know Sullivan's Island doesn't really allow it, so they don't have as much to manage. But I guess, I guess I'm just a little fuzzy on why it's more burdensome.
Staff time. We would have, if we did say a square foot limit on it, we would have to go and find exactly, what the construction documents for that ADU were, or that portion of the home, see if it, or that home, and see.
That should be the burden of the applicant, like how you have to submit a site plan to show the impervious. Like you'd have to
Again, we'd have to confirm what they're showing is representative of what's actually there. And, this is stuff like, again, that Jane has to do all the time. To see, a whole set of issues and stuff like that come into play. So, I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah. I know there's, certain circumstances where the taxable square footage isn't matching what's actually there, and, other weird things, especially the older something gets. But I'm just in the short time, we had the Church Street house come up, and then I know those houses that are for sale on Pitt Street behind the one we looked at tonight for demolition, they have a super small house in front and then a bigger house in back that they're trying to sell. And I'm just picturing who is going to want that? Who's going to want to essentially they have a little tiny historic house that they're going to have to spend an ungodly amount of money to fix up under our rigorous requirements. And then in terms of are they going to find a long-term renter that's going to pay enough to make that viable? Or is a homeowner going to want to live in that small of a house? So there's a lot of scenarios like that where I can see that thing's perfect for a well-managed STR. It would give someone the motivation to actually fix it up.
I will mention that in addition to the one on Church Street, we caught 2 other landowners that were using STRs as well, and they, to my knowledge, are stopping. So those are currently the only 3 that we know of that have even tried it within the past year, and we do have the records of all the sales from Airbnb, VRBO, et cetera, that are put into that system. So we can see, even if they used their property as an STR within the past 5 years, for instance. So, but no other properties have come up.
What happened with the, you said the council was reviewing the issue of whether there was something with like historic, the 50-year mark, and
so what they were reviewing
it
was
related to the Church Street somehow.
They were reviewing whether or not properties outside the district could be individually designated as historic, and therefore be under the purview of the commission, but be not within a district. So that was specifically targeting some of the churches, cemeteries that are kind of out by their lonesome, but aren't within a historical area where they could be included within a district. That's what that was targeting. And just an update on the 217 Church, they asked for a deferral at Planning Committee this month. So they asked for a 6-month deferral, so they'll be coming back up within 6 months. So that item's not moving forward until that time.
But
if we didn't have
council vote or not vote on that,
they approved the text amendment.
So we will be able to designate things historic, but they'll be outside the district.
Correct. I wouldn't, however, mention that the intent of that text amendment to have properties outside the district be declared historic was not meant for properties that were adjacent to a district. So it wasn't really intended for 217 Church Street. It was, again, intended for, say, like one of the AME churches that's out, that's off by itself, that's not within a historic district, or one of the many cemeteries that we have, or things along those lines.
Yeah, but there's houses that are, there's like a really old house on Freeman that someone's renovating right now that was historic, and it's not in the district, and we have nothing to say about it.
So the comprehensive plan, the draft comprehensive plan, calls for future districts to be created, which was a part of our last text amendment for the district passed in November, which was dealing with, it's the reason why we went through the name change, because we were going to potentially have more historic districts instead of just one. So, in particular, like the Old Village Settlement Community, or Snowden, or many of the other areas that have their own histories. So ideally we would begin capturing some of those historic homes, like you mentioned, that are just outside the district but within their own district.
Yeah, and that new district may have no change to the STR, if it applies to the whole town.
Exactly. They would be their own district and under their own parameters, and would not include the STRs unless for some reason that the community comes together and they all ask for it. Something that came about, like this one came about in 2007.
And then each of these new districts would have its own commission, so we wouldn't be like, this commission wouldn't have to do it.
They would all go to this commission.
Okay, but then we'd have different districts with different rules under this one commission.
Yes, that's the way other cities and municipalities handle it. Each historic district typically has its own, if they do it by an overlay district like we do, then they have their own rules and parameters for where it's located and the certain rules and, everything. Like they might not have a 5,500 BAR maximum. They might be lower than that, or they might be bigger than that, just depending on what the lot size and the typical home size is of that neighborhood. Or they again, they might allow STRs, they might not. And then they would also have their own design guidelines for whatever the typical design and, typical design treatment is for that neighborhood. So they wouldn't have the exact same design guidelines either. So if we're good on this discussion, we can move on to the next item. Mr. Gallagher, is that what you wanted to do?
That is exactly what I wanted to do for the last, yes.
Okay. So I wanted to bring this item up. We were originally going to have our, again, last November when we passed the ordinance changing that historic designation to the rolling 50 year, we were originally going to have that meeting in April. Of course, COVID decided otherwise. So I kind of wanted to gather what exactly you wanted to do as a commission. Did you want to have an online meeting to go over those, or did you want to wait until we have? Did you want to wait until we have or able to go back into the building, whenever that is, or maybe do several online meetings and maybe split it up a little bit? So it's kind of up to you. I was trying to gain exactly where you wanted to go with it. So feel free to pipe in with whatever you might want to do.
What are there, like 137 eligible properties?
I think about that number, but buildings. So some of them have multiple buildings on the same property.
Yeah, and you would be referring to the commercial ones in that regard?
About 3 or 4 of them are commercial structures there on Pitt Street.
I was wondering if there was any way staff could cull the herd a little bit. Maybe bring us your top 5 residential prospects, and then the same thing on the commercial side. So residential and commercial.
Okay.
Yeah, just to make it a little bit more manageable.
So you want to do it in stages?
Yeah,
Break it up.
This is where staff input could be very valuable.
Okay. All right.
Because I've looked through a bunch of them, virtually all of them, and I have a tough time coming up with my top 5.
Gotcha.
Even
okay.
After, yeah.
Did anyone else have any ideas?
I think that's a good idea if that's possible. Certainly would make it more manageable from our perspective. I'd
go through the rest after. Okay.
Breaking it up some, I would.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we going to be deciding this like without the homeowners input?
No, even though we're not required to, I sent out a letter for the original one, and I would do that again when we have we would probably do it by a special meeting to go over the addresses, and then we just go in stages. We could do a few at a time as we go through them all, and then of course with the new year. In 2021, a couple more structures are viable then. So we'll just keep cycling, to get them all done.
One other thought is some people might think their home should be and want it designated historic, and then what would be our reason not to designate it historic under that scenario?
Well, the designation of historic or not should be from the criteria that's listed. It shouldn't just be, someone could have a 20-year-old home and be like, I want historic, and likewise, vice versa, someone could have a 100-year home and be like, I don't want to be historic. It should just be based upon the, the regulation, the criteria that you have. So.
Yeah, but I thought the big deal with this is the 50 years, what's going to be the new thing that everyone's going to either love or hate.
That's the national standard. So, it's not like every home or structure that's 50 years old is worth it. Some of them aren't. And that went into staff's recommendations. And that was in large part based upon the survey cards, whether or not they were saying that it was contributing in 2010, and also the history that went into, some of them detailed the history of the home, such as former Mayor Coleman's home or something along those lines. So every home was different. So,
but I'm just wondering, like 5 at a time, we'll never get through them.
We could. I mean, obviously, maybe not 5 at a time, but maybe 10 to 20 at a time or something like that.
Corey, what I'm suggesting is that he pull out the most likely to be designated historical ones in his opinion. I had a tough time when I went through them, finding a heck of a lot of them that I thought met the standard of the historic village criteria.
Okay.
And, I feel a little bit different about some of the commercial things. Basically the Main Street right there in the old village.
Okay.
I think we might have something going there, but for the homes, I didn't see a heck of a lot of things that I would feel merited historic significance.
But I guess the procedure is we're trying to catch up on this 50-year thing, and going forward every year the new homes that qualify, you'd either say yay or nay. And then
the main intention is, come January each year or January, February, that we start the process, if there are any that were built, in that year, 50 years prior. Not to say that there always is, but sometimes there might be, sometimes there may be, sometimes you might get 10, sometimes you might get 0, So, the point is why I brought this discussion up. How exactly did you want to proceed? And we can certainly start with, maybe like the top 5 in the commercial, and then maybe start expanding from there. Basically as a means to get your feet wet, and then start up with all the other ones that are eligible.
Well, I'd like you to cull out the residential ones at the same time. Give us your top 5 residential and your top 5 commercial.
Okay. All right.
And if we find none of your top 5 residential worthy of historic designation, then probably there's not much use to drill down any deeper.
Well,
all through the herd.
Right. The way the ordinance is written is that we at least need to review them. The commission does at some point, because they haven't been reviewed before. So we do need to get through them at some point. But I do see what you're saying. Let's get our feet wet at the beginning here and go through the major ones.
You have to do it collectively.
Sorry?
I've gone through most of them already that you put up, and I assume we have to do it collectively, though?
Yes, it has to be out. It has to be out in a meeting. Yes.
Okay, so we can't delegate that.
No, it has to be. It has to be. Pure right out here in the meeting, public notice, everything. All right. So if we're good on that item, I did want to. This was actually provided to me in March, April, but since our last 2 meetings were very full, I wanted to get it on a meeting that wasn't so full, and this seemed like the perfect opportunity. So every 3 years, I'm sorry, let me get to it. Every 3 years, the State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, does a certified local government, or CLG, evaluation for all their CLGs across the state, of which we are one of 36. And so it's basically going through, they go through and review exactly what we've done in the past 3 years, how many COAs we've issued, how many, historic properties we've designated, and they'll go through some of our minutes, see if they see any issues and how we're proceeding through our meetings and stuff like that. So great thing is that they determined that we are meeting our responsibilities, but I did want to kind of go through their comments and suggestions that they made that are directly related to you as the commission. So The first one we did last month, where now more items are going through staff level, which allows you to really utilize your time to focus on the major projects, such as the demolitions and the additions and the renovations like we had tonight. Avoid stating likes and your dislikes, or that you're comfortable with it. Use the language that it meets or does not meet the design guidelines. And, it meets historical correctness and stuff, for the home, and things that wording in especially your motions, that you don't use the like or the dislike language. They suggested that you follow the recommendations of staff where applicable, and include in the motions for approval that where they deviate from the design guidelines, why they deviate, whether it should be approved like that, or also in denial. So if we had a denial based upon the design guidelines, just list that, hey, this is against the design guidelines, yada, yada. Though SHPO does not recommend regulating paint color, if commissions wish to do so, have an approved palette. When you approve the design guidelines with the paint, we have an approved palette. So it's not 5 different palettes or anything. It's pretty. It's manageable for staff especially, so that's good. And then encourage members to attend our annual State Historic Preservation Conference. That was originally supposed to be in April. It got delayed to September, and something tells me it's going to get delayed again or something along those lines. So that's basically it. I just wanted to, get these out to you, make sure that you know them. So that's really all there is. So Mr. Gallagher, if you had no questions or anything about this, Mr. Gallagher can adjourn unless you do.
I have one question, if you don't, Gene.
Yes.
Give me an example, Austin, of a commercial building.
Oh, downtown. So Pitt Street Pharmacy is up for historic designation.
Okay.
Also, not exactly commercial, but Alhambra Hall is also up for designation as well. That's not exactly commercial, that's government, but it's along the same vein. Mm-hmm. As well as the old post office, which is across the street from the post house.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions about this or anything? Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Gallagher?
I don't have any other questions. Did I hear a motion for adjournment?
We don't need to do a motion. You can just adjourn since
Can we just adjourn? Then I would like to declare this meeting adjourned.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hope you all have a great next month, and I'll look forward to seeing you in September. And we should have a full commission by then, by the way.
Hey, Austin. Can I?
Yeah, Jane, can you take us off the recording?
Yes.
You are off.
All right. Yes, Gene?
Yeah, on the color situation, that goes into effect in August, or
yeah, it went into effect today.
Okay.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be a historic building if it's in the historic district. Is that right?
It applies to every single structure.
Exactly.
Yep.
Who decides whether it is on the Old Charleston color chart? And because those colors are so close, and
they'll have to in their COA to me, they have to let me know which color they're choosing. So if they ask for Charleston white and I see they went for Charleston green instead, those are obviously two different colors. We can be like, hey, this wasn't the approved color and blah, blah, blah,
okay,
whatever.
The only other question was if somebody has a house that is painted a certain color now, can they repaint it that same color if it's not in the chart?
If it's not historic, then they need to pick the most the closest color on the historic chart, or they could pick another color if they wanted to. If they're historic, then they need to pick the closest color on the chart.
Okay.
Or else they need to go to the commission for approval.
Okay.
I can do it at staff level as long as it's the closest color. If they want to change the color completely to something different, then it goes to you at the commission.
Thank you.
All right. Are we good?
Good.
All right. Have a great month. I'll see you here September.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Later, guys. Bye.